Emily, a soft-spoken woman who kept to herself and never sought attention, had been working there quietly for years. She folded towels, made beds, and always greeted guests with a gentle smile. No one ever imagined she'd be publicly humiliated and fired on the spot by the hotel's sharp-suited CEO, right in front of staff and guests. What the CEO didn't know, Emily's father wasn't just anyone, and when he walked through those glass doors later that afternoon, everything changed. Fast. The CEO, Mr. Langford, was known for being ruthless. To him, employees were just numbers on a spreadsheet. That morning, after a brief complaint from an elite guest about a slow room service, he marched straight to the staff lounge and pointed at Emily. "You're done here," he barked. "Pack your things." No explanation, no hearing her side, just cold dismissal. Emily, stunned and humiliated, quietly gathered her things as the room fell into an uneasy silence. No one dared speak up. She left through the service exit, tears welling, but her hands never shook. A few hours later, as the hotel buzzed with afternoon check-ins, a black SUV pulled up outside the front entrance. Out stepped a tall man in a crisp gray suit, silver hair, and a presence that seemed to freeze time. The doorman tried to stop him. He didn't even flinch. He walked through the lobby like he owned the place, because in a way he did. Heads turned, staff whispered, and when he reached the front desk, he uttered a single line that made the receptionist's face go pale. "Get your CEO down here, now." The receptionist hesitated, stammered something into the phone, and within minutes, Mr. Langford stormed down from his office on the top floor. He barely glanced at the man in the gray suit. "If this is about a reservation, speak to my assistant," Langford snapped. The man didn't flinch. He slowly turned his head, locking eyes with the CEO. "You fired the wrong woman." Langford raised an eyebrow, then smirked. "Excuse me?" The man stepped closer, his voice still calm, but every word carried weight. "You didn't even ask her what happened. You embarrassed her in front of a crowd. And now, you're going to fix it." Langford scoffed. "And who the hell are you? Her union rep?" A pause. Then came the answer. Cool, devastating, and just loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "No, I'm the man your board answers to." You could hear a pin drop. Langford's face drained of color. He opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. He looked around, as if hoping this was some sort of prank. The man in the gray suit leaned in just slightly. "You have 10 minutes to reinstate her, with an apology, or your next meeting will be with lawyers and shareholders." And just like that, he turned and walked toward the bar, calm as ever. As he sat down, he glanced at the bartender. "Scotch. Neat." The room was still frozen. Langford hadn't moved. Langford was still standing there, frozen. The staff behind the front desk had stopped pretending to work. Guests were pretending not to stare. And Emily? She had just walked back in, escorted by the hotel's head of security, who had received a very sudden call. She looked confused. She hadn't expected to be called back. And she definitely hadn't expected to see her father sitting at the bar like a scene from a movie, sipping scotch, calm as ever. Langford finally found his voice. "Wait, you're her father?" The man didn't even look at him. He simply set down his glass, pulled a silver card from his wallet, and slid it across the bar counter. Langford picked it up, and his hands began to tremble. On the card was a single name, embossed in clean, bold letters. Raymond H. Callahan, Chairman, Callahan International Holdings. Langford's lips moved, but no sound came out. He looked around again, this time truly panicked. Everyone knew the name Callahan. The man who quietly owned half the luxury hotels in the country. The man who rarely appeared in public. The man he technically worked for. Callahan finally stood, brushed a speck of lint from his sleeve, and walked past Langford without a glance. "Emily," he said, his voice softer now, "come with me." She followed, stunned, as the room parted for them. Langford stood in the middle, holding the card like it was radioactive. But before the father and daughter reached the elevator, Callahan paused. He didn't turn around. Just 3 words, cool and final. "You're finished here." The elevator doors slid shut. Upstairs, in the penthouse suite reserved only for VIP executives, Emily sat on the velvet couch in stunned silence. Her father poured her a cup of tea from a silver pot like it was any ordinary afternoon. "I don't understand," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why didn't you ever tell anyone who you were?" Raymond Callahan looked out the window for a moment, his jaw tight, then turned back to her. "Because I wanted to see who treated you like a human being when they thought you were no one." Emily's eyes welled with tears, not just from the humiliation earlier that day, but from the years of quiet sacrifice her father had made, watching from the shadows. Meanwhile, downstairs, the hotel boardroom lights had flickered on. An emergency meeting had been called. Langford sat stiffly at the head of the table, his collar slightly damp with sweat. Half the board members were already on edge, phones buzzing, lawyers whispering in corners. One of the senior members, a woman with icy gray eyes and a sharper tongue, finally broke the silence. "You fired his daughter?" she asked, voice low and sharp. Langford tried to defend himself, but the words came out thin. "There was a complaint. I didn't know." "Exactly," she interrupted. "You didn't know. That's the problem." Another board member chimed in. "This isn't just bad optics. It's personal. Raymond built this company. Half of us wouldn't be sitting here if it weren't for him. And now we're one social media post away from a PR disaster." Langford's face turned pale. "It was a mistake. I can fix it." "No," the gray-eyed woman said. "You're no longer in a position to fix anything." She slid a folder across the table toward him. Inside, his termination papers. Langford stared at it in disbelief. "You can't be serious." But no one looked at him. The meeting was already moving on: new leadership, damage control, whispers about a press release. Back upstairs, Emily stood at the window of the suite, looking down at the street below. Her father placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "This isn't just about you anymore," he said quietly. "Now you have a choice." She turned to him. "A choice?" Raymond nodded. "To walk away or to walk in." Emily stood in front of the panoramic window, gazing out over the city skyline, the weight of her father's words hanging heavy in the air. She had lived a life of quiet simplicity, always behind the scenes, always invisible to the powerful. And yet, here she was, standing at the crossroads of her own destiny. Raymond Callahan watched his daughter carefully, his expression unreadable. The world outside had changed in a single afternoon. No longer was she just the quiet woman who folded linens and smiled at guests. Now she was the daughter of the man who owned it all. But what did she want? Her heart was torn. The woman she was, the one who had lived a humble life, wanted to step away from this world of power and prestige. She could walk out that door and never look back, returning to the life she had built on her own terms. No one would blame her. But the other part of her, The part that had been overlooked for so long began to rise. The part that knew her worth. She wasn't just her father's daughter. She was Emily Callahan. "Dad," she said, her voice steady now, "I'm not walking away. I'm stepping in." Her father's face softened, but there was a glint of pride in his eyes. He had never expected her to take the easy road. He had raised her to make her own decisions, to be more than just a legacy. "Then let's do this," Raymond replied, a smile playing at the corners of his lips. "It's time for the world to know who you really are." The next few days were a whirlwind. Emily made her presence known, sitting in board meetings, meeting with the top executives, and slowly rebuilding the reputation of the hotel chain. She didn't rush in with demands or forceful tactics. Instead, she used her strength in silence, an unwavering confidence that came from knowing she deserved to be there, not because of who her father was, but because of who she had always been. Langford's exit was swift and dramatic. A public apology was issued, but it was too little, too late. The board, now under Emily's influence, voted to move in a new direction, one that respected employees and treated them with dignity. The company culture began to shift from the top down, and Emily made sure that no one was ever fired without a fair hearing again. Months later, Emily stood in the hotel lobby once more, not as an employee, but as the new CEO of Callahan Hospitality Group. She had earned her place, not through her father's name, but through her own grit and determination. The woman who had once been invisible was now a force to be reckoned with, and the world would never forget her.